Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 194 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be discussing the latest episode of the live action series on Disney Plus, Star Wars: The Acolyte from Lucasfilm. Very excited to talk about that. And for that discussion, I have invited on the show for the very first time my cousin and fellow Star Wars fan, Jessica Milne. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. So here's the story. I went to visit my mom in South Carolina, where she lives now, about a month ago, and she kept telling me, "Oh, your cousin's so into Star Wars. You have to talk to her. Your cousin's so into Star Wars. You have to have her on your podcast." And as you know, Jessica, there are people who like Star Wars, and then there are people who like Star Wars. So I wasn't sure which one of those you were. So she got us on FaceTime, and we started talking. I remember I brought up Tales of the Empire, and you started talking about Barriss Offee, and I was like, okay, maybe she knows her stuff, but again, thank you. I'm so glad to have you on the show. I'm excited to chat with you about Acolyte.
Yeah, me too. Your mom has been talking to me about coming on the podcast probably before she was even talking to you about coming on the podcast. So I'm excited to be here.
Great. Awesome. So we should say you're dialing in all the way from across the country in New Jersey. Very excited to chat with you. And by the way, out there, if you are watching this live, we are live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you would like to comment along or ask any questions, we'll be happy to address them right here on the show. Here we go. This is called the 5 Star Wars questions. Every guest on the show has to do this legally when they come on. This gives us kind of a baseline of your Star Wars fandom. Are you ready for this, Jessica?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Number 1 of the 5 Star Wars questions. What is your earliest Star Wars memory?
Okay, I feel like this is a little niche and a little weird, but I learned who Darth Vader was through Toy Story.
Okay.
I don't know if it's Toy Story 1 or Toy Story 2, but the big villain toy, his name is Zurg.
Emperor Zurg, yeah.
Zurg, and he's obviously supposed to be Darth Vader, and was like my first, "Oh, this is Darth Vader," and then I learned what Star Wars was.
That's really funny, actually, because this other podcast I do called Pop Culture Explorers Club, we just recorded a Pixar episode, and we were talking about the connections between Toy Story and Star Wars. So yeah, love that movie, Toy Story 2, the whole thing with Buzz and Zurg in the elevator shaft. Yeah.
Buzz, yeah.
That's a pretty fun introduction to Star Wars. And then, like, how did you start watching the actual Star Wars content?
It was very casual after that. Like, I watched the movies as kids. I think the prequels were coming out right around that time.
Yeah.
And then I think I got more heavily into it, like very much as an adult, like in college. And that's when I started watching extra content and reading stuff. And
you said you have friends who are Star Wars fans too, so you have a pretty good like community going.
Yes. I have my best friend, he's like a big Star Wars nerd, and
Nice.
we talk daily. We send TikTok edits and stuff like that. So we're always talking about it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear it. I'm always worried that like the younger generations are not getting into Star Wars, but then I go to conventions and stuff, and there's a bunch of young people who are into Star Wars, so I have nothing to worry about. Number 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions: which is your current favorite Star Wars movie or TV series, and why?
I think it's always Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
The prequels are obviously like where my heart lies because they're the first things that I've encountered. I think seeing Anakin physically become Vader, like that transformation is unbeatable. However, if you were to expand this question and I could pick like any Star Wars media, I'd probably pick the video games, like Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order. I think like being able to play and like be Cal Kestis and stuff. That was great.
Yeah, I'm loving those Cal Kestis games too. Are you looking forward to Star Wars Outlaws?
Yes, I just saw the what is it, a trailer or gameplay trailer.
Yeah,
it was very cool, and I think it'll be cool to not be a Jedi.
I know that. Yeah, that was the first thing that really excited me about that game because I'm I like the Jedi, but I had enough of them. I just wanna go to
Mhm.
other parts of the galaxy. I like the scum and villainy and the
Piracy.
underworld and the criminals in the Star Wars galaxy. So it looks like that's what that is gonna be all about. Number 3, who is your favorite Star Wars character and why?
This is a very hard question for me, but I think it's a very close Obi-Wan in first place and Kanan Jarrus in second. To
Nice.
me, Obi-Wan, he's just like the coolest guy on the planet. So much pain, so much suffering, but he's unwavering in his beliefs and he's the ultimate Jedi. So I think that's that. And then Kanan, he's such a close second because I think he's the perfect example of what a Jedi could have been if they had opened up and maybe progressed a little with the times and he mastered, I think, attachments in a way that all Jedi could have if it was attempted to.
Yeah, I love those. I love both of those choices. Do you prefer the Ewan McGregor? I'm sure you prefer Ewan McGregor to the older Sir Alec Guinness Obi-Wan.
Yeah, of course, but I think that Alec Guinness, I mean, I think Ewan McGregor does a great job at being Alec Guinness.
Right.
Like, I think it was such a good casting. So
Yeah,
I like them both. To me, they're both Obi-Wan to me.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that he does a little bit of an impression, but he definitely like makes it his
He's good.
own as well. And then like James Arnold Taylor in the cartoons and stuff.
I think he sounds like Ewan McGregor a lot.
Yeah,
Like I know some of them. Like I think it's is it Matt Lanter who's Anakin in Clone Wars.
right.
Like he was a little like his voice obviously doesn't sound like Hayden Christensen to me,
Mhm.
but at first I was like fooled when I first heard Obi-Wan. I was like, whoa, that kind of sounds like Obi-Wan to me. So
Yeah, if you listen when the audio version of this show goes out, you'll hear the intro, which is done by James Arnold Taylor. He recorded the intro for my show.
oh, very
Um, Number 4, if you happen to live in the fictional Star Wars universe, where do you think you would fit in? What faction would you belong to? We talked about the scum and villainy earlier. That's kind of my choice, but there's also the Jedi, the Sith, the Rebel Alliance, the Empire, the Bounty Hunters, anything else you can come up with. Where do you think you would fit in the Star Wars universe?
okay. I really think I have to like choose Jedi because that's just what I would want to be. But if I had to pick something like outside of that, I would pick maybe like royalty on some planet, like an
Oh,
Alderaan or Naboo. Like I think that would be very cool
I
to
don't think
be like
we've
a
yeah, go
cooler
ahead.
higher class citizen in some kind of way.
Yeah, I don't think we've had that choice before. That's a really interesting choice. I like that a lot. The royalty. Something always bad happens to you if you're
Yeah.
in this like you get your planet gets blown up or
Yeah.
I don't know, Leia got kidnapped and then Naboo got invaded, so
Yeah.
it's never a comfortable royalty, but uh you probably live a nice life for a little
Yeah,
while
for
at least.
sure. For a bit.
Number 5 is called impression or possession. This one you have a choice. You can either do a Star Wars impression or you can opt out and simply tell me about a favorite Star Wars possession that you may own. Which would you like to choose, Jessica?
A possession. So I
Okay,
prepared for this because
right.
I just commissioned a piece of art from this
Oh,
artist, and she does kind of nerd art, for lack of a better word. It is so awesome. So I bought this framed, and she sketched this just for me, literally. And it's BD1. Oh, I hope that you could see this.
oh yeah. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and so I'm so
awesome.
happy to have him. I love him so much. Um, her name is Heather, and her on Instagram is upcycled_vintage_art, and she does a lot of putting. She buys like vintage paintings, and she'll import or paint, Star Wars art onto it. So she just did like an AT-AT
Yeah.
in Times Square. It was very cool. And when I commissioned the piece, I had just found out that I was going to come on and speak to you. So I decided to get you a little something. So you're going to get something in the mail from me.
What? Oh my
Yeah,
god,
it's
that's
definitely worth
amazing.
it. Yeah, it's very awesome. So I hope you like it.
Wow. Wow, thank you so much. That's
Yeah,
incredible. Wow, I haven't gotten you anything.
no,
We'll start sending stuff back and forth to each other. Yeah, that's so thoughtful. Thank you. That's
of
incredible.
course.
And I was gonna say, when you were showing me BD1, I was gonna say I have the Lego. It's like a life-size BD1, but I haven't built it yet. Have
I
you
have
seen
him
that?
too.
Oh
I
yeah.
have him. He's halfway built. I started
Oh,
probably like a month ago, and then I had finals and everything for school, and I stopped him, and I just couldn't get it done that night, and I haven't picked him back up. But his body is done, so I just
oh,
have to
cool.
finish his head.
Yeah, someday when I find the time, I'm gonna put him together. But yeah, thanks again. As soon as I get that, I'm gonna show it off on the Instagram and everything. So really appreciate that.
Of course.
Very thoughtful of you. Let's get into some Star Wars headlines for this week. We talked about this already. Star Wars Outlaws. There was that new gameplay footage released. This is all about the Star Wars underworld. The main character's name is Kay Vess, and she's got a little. It's almost kind of like a little salamander.
He looks like an axolotl.
Axolotl. Yeah, exactly. We were
Yeah.
talking about this last night. And I saw in the footage that you can like make him distract people and then attack them from the other side. So it looks like he's sort of this character. I think his name is Nyx. You can
Yeah.
use him. He's sort of your BD1 in this game.
Exactly, that's what I
And
was thinking.
yeah, and Outlaws is an open world Star Wars game. I think it takes place between Empire and Jedi, so it is in the Galactic Civil War era. I'm super psyched for this. I love open world games, and like you, I really enjoyed the Star Wars Jedi games. So I'm super excited to see what they've done with this. Did you have any other thoughts about Star Wars Outlaws?
I think the honor system seems really cool.
Yeah,
It kind of reminded me of like Red Dead Redemption or something like that kind of video game that your choices will change based on how you're acting and how
yeah.
people will react to. I think that'll be really cool.
We got a question in the comments here from Dr. War God. Do you think the sequels will get a resurgence in the fandom the way the prequels did? So I was probably a little younger than you when the prequel trilogy started coming out. I was 19 when Phantom Menace came out, and I mean, I was really excited for it. It took a while to kind of come to terms with the final product, and I ended up not really liking it back then. They've kind of grown on me a little bit, but I do, obviously I've noticed in the past 25 years since the prequels started coming out, the kids who grew up on them embrace them and love them, and that's their Star Wars. So I think, in my opinion, the kids who grew up on the sequels with Rey and Finn and Poe Dameron it's gonna be the same exact thing. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree completely. I think that the sequels might be getting more hate than the prequels even did,
Yeah.
but I think that the kids who grew up with it are gonna like it a lot more, and I think it'll have the same effect.
Yeah, I think give something like a couple decades, 20 years, and then the kids who loved it will grow up and become adults and embrace it in the same way. I think there's a cycle to these things.
Yeah.
So in all likelihood, I think that's what will happen. Let's talk about comic books real quickly. This week there was only one new Star Wars comic. Usually there's like 3 or 4. We had Darth Vader number 47. We're getting to the end of this run of Darth Vader. I think 50 is going to be the last issue. I really liked this one. Do you read any of the Star Wars comics, Jessica?
So I don't follow comics a lot, but I do read the Vader ones every once in a while. Sometimes people put them on TikTok in like those carousel videos.
Okay.
I like to watch them there. I
Interesting.
particularly like I loved the Vader one that talked all about Sabe and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But she realized Anakin, like how she basically told Vader, like, I obviously know you're Anakin. Like I
Yeah.
thought that was so cool. But yeah, I feel like I'll get more into them as I have like more time, but
Okay.
I don't follow them.
I have to admit I hadn't heard about people consuming comics via TikTok.
Yeah,
But,
TikTok
but
is
I'm but I'm old. My friend Nick, who was on last week, loves Save as well. He was very excited that she made her return in the Darth Vader comics. And yeah, it seems like this final arc of the current Darth Vader comic is going to be all about Sabe as well. So if you're a fan of these handmaidens from Naboo, you may want to check out this story. She's teaming up with Luke Skywalker
Oh,
to
that would be
try,
good.
yeah, to try to take down Darth Vader. We know it doesn't happen
Yeah.
because Return of the Jedi hasn't happened yet in the timeline. But I'm loving the comics. The Darth Vader title's written by Greg Pak, really good comic book writer. Check it out wherever you get your comics. Toy news from Hasbro. They announced the Vintage Collection and Black Series Osha from the Acolyte, because Osha was kind of a secret character. We didn't know about her before the show started. They had said Amandla Stenberg was playing May, but Osha was not yet revealed. So Hasbro waited until now to tell us about the Osha action figures, but they also revealed a holocom version of Ezra Bridger from Rebels, and both May and Osha from Ahsoka. And Holocom are these transparent blue figures, and they come with a nice little like hollow communication puck that they stand on and they light up. It's really cool. And then the Acolyte is also getting a 6-pack of retro collection action figures, which are in the style of the old Kenner Star Wars toys. Do you collect Star Wars action figures at all, Jessica?
No action figures, but I'd love to.
Oh
I
yeah.
wanna start a helmet collection too.
Oh yeah, I've got some of the helmets. This is the
Yeah.
Flame Trooper from the Mandalorian. I've got Bo-Katan over here. Thank you to Hasbro for sending me that one, by the way. Really, really love all the helmets that they do. Speaking of Hasbro, they just announced this new HasLab campaign. So HasLab is like the really large scale play sets that they do. They did Jabba's sail barge. They did the Razor Crest from the Mandalorian, which is up there in 3 3/4 inch vintage collection scale, but they're really big vehicles and play sets. And the new one is the Mos Eisley Cantina, which looks really, really cool. It's like 300 something bucks, but it's, I think it does appeal to older collectors. And it comes with, for the first time ever, they're making the Tonica sisters, who are like background characters in the Cantina, and a couple other figures that you can unlock. The more, so it's kind of like a crowdfunding campaign. The more backers they get, the more toys, the more action figures will come with this set. Have you seen this
I have.
campaign? Yeah. What did
Yeah,
you think of
it
that?
was cool. It definitely, like, looked like the cantina, like, it
Yeah,
looked really neat. I think it would be really awesome to have it like a collector, like a basement and
I know.
the little, like, what are they called? The glass boxes.
Oh, like a coffee table or something? Or
Yeah, yeah, like in a coffee table, that would be
yeah,
so cool.
exactly. Yeah, I would love to have that too. I have noticed people complaining that it looks like there's no, because you can get two different versions of the cantina. One's like half of it, and then if you get the deluxe version, it comes with the full building. But people have pointed out that there's no place for the band, for the cantina band to stand and perform, which is seems like a uh,
Overlook.
oversight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if you want to back this right now, you can go to HasbroPulse.com, and it's like 300 something dollars, and you'll get it, I think, probably in a year or something. But it looks really sweet. It's great again for action figure and playset collectors. Roosevelt's is a shirt company that we partner with a lot on Laughing Place, and they have new Darth Vader and Mandalorian golf gear. You can check that out at laughingplace.com. This is just in time for Father's Day, which is coming up this weekend. You can check out a new I Am Your Father's Day products unboxing on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. I just did this the other day. You can find it right here on the YouTube. It's like a half an hour video of me opening up all these Father's Day products from a bunch of different Lucasfilm licensees. And thank you again to Disney Consumer Products for sending that over to us. You can find that again at laughingplace.com, the Laughing Place YouTube channel. Let's get into some Acolyte news really quickly before we talk about the actual show. 11 million views over the first 5 days. Now, Disney doesn't always release the numbers of these shows, the viewership numbers of these shows, but I think when they are proud of it, they do put out the numbers, and they got 11 million views over the first 5 days. So I think that means it's doing pretty well. It's hard to compare when we don't have a lot to compare it to, but I
Mhm.
don't know. In your experience, Jessica, how do you think the Acolyte is resonating with fans so far?
I see some people absolutely loving it, and I see some people absolutely not liking it. So I think there's like a hard I love it and I don't like it right
Yeah,
now. I don't see a lot of people that are in the middle.
right.
Um, I feel
So
like
it's
you have to be in the middle,
yeah,
but
it's
no,
kind
I
of
don't see it.
polarizing for sure.
Yeah.
I do think people there was like a subset of the fandom that was primed to dislike it from the very beginning, which is never how I like to go in. I try to go into media and Star Wars especially wanting to enjoy it, and usually I do, and this one I do, but I understand if you have legitimate criticisms that are presented in in good faith, but there seems to be a lot of people out there who are souring on the show, and maybe not giving it the chance that it deserves.
I
Uh,
agree.
yeah,
I feel like for no reason, even before it aired, I was seeing,
Exactly.
yeah, just seeing so many people. And the way I see it is like, as long as I'm getting content, I don't really care if it's
Right.
bad. I just want to see more things.
Yeah, when I was a teenager in the 90s, they were putting out a lot of expanded universe stuff in Star Wars, a lot of novels coming out and comics. And now it kind of feels that way, but with TV. We get
Mhm.
a lot more live action and animated content than we ever got before for Star Wars. And even if I don't like one or two of these projects that come out, I know that I could just wait for the next one.
Yeah.
Like, it's not gonna make me super angry if I don't like The Bad Batch or something, which I did. So it is pretty rare for me to be terribly upset about Star Wars these days. Let's see. Dr. War God said again, Kylo Ren's helmet is goated, which I think means greatest of all time,
Yeah.
if I'm speaking the lingo.
Which Kylo Ren helmet? The original or the one
Oh
that's
yeah,
slapping together?
the reforged
Yeah,
helmet. Yeah, and then he also agreed that Star Wars Theory and his crew always ready with the haterade like
Gatorade.
that. And then let's see, Mason, the King of Horror, just said Star. Oh, what are we talking about? Star Wars, and he only likes the first three Star Wars.
It
Different
happens.
different strokes for different folks, as they say. But hopefully you find something else that you enjoy as well. Let's get into the main topic for this week's episode of Who's the Boss, which is episode 3 of Star Wars The Acolyte. It's the live action series coming out on Disney Plus right now every Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Episode 3 was entitled Destiny. But before we get into this episode specifically, I want to ask you, Jessica, what were your expectations going into this show?
Yeah, so originally I was very excited to hear about it after the first announcements. Like I said before, any content is better than not getting anything. So I
Yeah.
was very excited. And then right before the original first episode, the 2 episode premiere happened, I saw an interview with some of the cast members, and I was kind of, like, thrown off by what they said because they said some, like, fundamentally incorrect things about the Star Wars universe, and
Oh no.
I was like, "Oh, brother, like, they don't know, like, this is important." And I was like, not that I think that an actor has to be, like, a diehard fan to be in the show
Right.
and be good, but I feel like if they are really passionate, you could tell that in their acting or even their voice acting, like Sam Witwer as Maul, like, anytime I hear him speak, he just knows so much, and he can, like, come up with things
Right.
on his own, and even, like, Freddie Prinze Jr. As Kanan, like, I don't know, those people, they're, like, diehard Star Wars nerds, like, they know so much, so I feel like when they're passionate, it makes it so much better. So, I was a little thrown off by those comments, but it quickly went away when I watched the first episodes and was happy to see what I was seeing.
That's a perfect segue into me asking you, what did you think of last week's 2 episode premiere once you finally got to see the whole thing?
I thought it was good. I didn't have any major complaints. Um, yeah, I was just happy to hear what and see what was going on. I wasn't expecting because I had not read. I knew Amandla was like playing the main character, but I didn't read the names, so I didn't know that she was just. I think you said originally just credited as May and not
Yeah.
Osha.
Hmm.
So I wasn't expecting there to be a twin thing. Um, and then as the inconsistency started, and I was like, she's really playing this good. Like she really did not murder her. Like it was good. I really liked the twist that there were twins.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So you enjoyed episodes 1 and 2. Episode 3 this week, entitled Destiny, directed by, I apologize if I mispronounce this, Koga Nada, a single name director from Korea. Now, the star of this show, Lee Jung Jae, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly either, is also Korean. I don't know if they knew each other before this. Koga Nada has made a film called Columbus that I've heard good things about. I have not seen it yet, but certainly seems like from this episode that he is a talented filmmaker, and I want to look up the rest of his stuff and maybe check it out if I get the chance. Written by Jasmine Flournoy, who had no previous writing credits. She was a writer's assistant, I think, on one of these other Star Wars shows. So she got a nice promotion into being a writer, but she wrote it along with Eileen Shim, who has written House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spinoff. The director of photography this week was James Friend. He did the All Quiet on the Western Front remake recently. The editor was Cheryl Potter, who also did Solo, a Star Wars story. So let's talk about this week's episode. This is the big flashback episode where we finally start to learn a little bit about, a lot actually, about May and Osha's past on this planet Brendok. I think it was the name of the planet,
Right
right?
now. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so we know now that she grew up in a coven of witches that were very protective of her. We know that maybe she was also immaculately conceived through the Force, sort of like Anakin Skywalker. I know some people are upset about that. And we got to see sort of how this coven was approached by the Jedi. And they wanted to test May and Osha for their Force sensitivity and bring if they wanted to come, they were willing to bring them into the Jedi Order to be trained as Padawans. What did you think of episode 3, Destiny, Jessica?
So I liked it a lot, and I think I liked it more than the first 2 episodes. I feel like it really progressed the story and explained things.
Yeah.
Specifically, I really liked seeing the opposing sides of the twins and just how different they were, like, right from the get-go.
Hmm.
Seeing
Yeah,
their
because you can, when they're in the beginning, in the first scene, when they're sitting at that tree, I think they call it the
Mhm.
Bunta tree,
Yeah.
not to be confused with Bunta Eve on Tatooine, the pod race, but
Mhm.
they're sitting there and they're kind of playing with these butterfly-like creatures, and you could see they're kind of manipulating the dark side to affect them, or one of them is. I don't know. What was your interpretation of it?
Well, I thought that OSHA had did it the one time, the first kind of where you see the moth butterfly thing freeze. I thought that
Yeah.
was OSHA, and I thought she was just seeing like, "Oh, I can do this," and then she obviously let it go free, and it was nice. And then when May came in and really looked like she was hurting the creature, and the creature looked like it was in pain, I was immediately like, "Okay, we're Team OSHA. Like we like OSHA."
Right.
So I just thought it was interesting. Like you can tell that May is almost more attracted to the dark side from the beginning.
So right off the top, yeah. Anything else stick out to you as a favorite moment from this episode?
I think just seeing OSHA lie to May
Right.
as as twins and sisters, like you don't typically you're close with your twin. So I think it was interesting that she was like, "Yeah, I'm not. Don't worry, I promise. I'm gonna fail the test." And then she goes in there and doesn't fail the test because she wants to be a Jedi so badly, even though she just met them.
Right. And it was very cool seeing the actual test itself that we first saw in the Phantom Menace, that little handheld screen that Master Soul is holding up, and he's got the images there, sort of
Yeah,
like how we saw, was it Mace Windu holding the same thing in one of the movies, Phantom Menace, I think it was.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, we see OSHA deliberately trying to fail the test on her mother's instructions, and then Soul kind of calls her out on
I
it,
love
and
when he says that,
yeah.
"Oh, yeah, you're right." And she's like, "Am I right?" I was like, "Okay."
Let's go through the cast really quickly of this episode. So Lee Jung Jae, like I said earlier, is back as Master Soul, 16 years younger, though we should say, than the other episodes. Jodie Turner Smith is Mother Anastasia. This is one of Osha and May's 2 mothers, and she's also apparently the leader of this uh, witch coven. Now, here's a good time for me to ask you this, Jessica. Do you think this coven of witches is related in any way to the Dathomirian Night Sisters, who we've seen so much of in the Clone Wars, and what else have they been in the video games and in Ahsoka recently? It
Yeah.
seems like maybe they aren't. I don't know. What do you think?
So, it crossed my mind, obviously, as soon as I saw them,
Yeah,
and especially after seeing the Mountain Clan in Tales of the Empire. Um, Now we know that it's, like, possible that there are other magic users on Dathomir, so I think they could be from Dathomir, but maybe
right.
not connected to the Night Sisters, maybe they're, like, a different faction, but given that we saw the Mountain Clan, I guess it's possible that there could be magic users from some other planet. So, I don't think they have to be Dathomirian, but
Right.
at least we know it's another possibility that there are some magic/force users from other parts of the universe.
Yeah, I agree. I think don't necessarily need to be directly connected. You did notice that one of them is of the Zabrak
Zabrak.
species, I
Well, that's
believe, right?
why yeah, I was like, "Oh my gosh, are they from Dathomir?" Because there's a Zabrak woman,
Yeah,
and, then I was like, she can't just" I don't know. I was, like, thinking too fast.
right. But certainly seems like when they use the Force, it's not expressed in the way that we have seen through the Night Sisters. It's not a green kind of
Yeah,
smoky magic with a K at the end that we've seen from the Night Sisters, right?
and I don't know if it was done on purpose, but I felt like when they it was in I think it was in this yeah, it was in this episode when Osha and May were watching them do the force pulls and pushes,
Yes.
it almost felt clunky. Like, they didn't feel as elegant as when you see, I don't know, Anakin do it as
Hmm.
Vader. Like, it felt clunky, so it's like, are they not as good at manipulating the Force, or is this how their magic works? Like, I don't know, it seemed interesting.
It is interesting, and I really like that they're getting into exploring more different sects of cultures that use the Force in different ways than the Jedi. This is something that has come up a bunch in the High Republic on the publishing side in the novels and comics. There's a there's a whole arc of the High Republic that takes place on the planet Jeddah, Jedha, from Rogue One. And on that planet in Jeddah City, there is a convocation of the Force where the Jedi are represented there, but there's also all these other groups that use the Force in different ways. It's like the Sorcerers of Tuned is another one. And I think that was carried over from the Legends timeline. But I really love this idea that oh, there are more groups out there using the Force that are not the Jedi and have their own ideas about the Force and how it should be respected or used or not used. And I'm loving that we're getting to see that a bit in the Acolyte. I also found it interesting when the Jedi come in to the fortress there where the Coven of Witches is living, and they basically accuse them of, first of all, they're hiding the children from even existing, from hiding them from the Jedi's awareness, but they're also accusing the witches of training them, which I don't know. How did you read that? Is it against the rules of the Republic at this point for anyone but the Jedi to train someone in the ways of the Force? What was your interpretation of
So,
that?
yeah, that's how I thought. I thought it was against the rules of the Republic, but then the witches so carefully explain that Brendok, where they're
Yes.
located, is not part of the Republic. So, I think that's what they were getting at is, "Hey, only
Yeah.
the Jedi are allowed to do this."
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm. So I think it's also super fascinating that we are getting to see a side of the Jedi that we haven't really seen before. And I'm going to put a pin in that as we go through the rest of the cast here. Margarita Levieva, who played Mother Coral, and this is the other mother of May and Osha. And then Dean Charles Chapman is back as Master Torben, again, a younger version. Jonas Suotamo is back as Kelnaka, 16 years younger, but for Wookiees, that's not as big of a deal because Wookiees are longer lived. But very cool to get more screen time with Kelnaka in this episode. Obviously, in the last episode, we just saw him for a brief moment before that episode ends. What are your thoughts on Kelnaka so far? This first live action Wookiee Jedi.
yeah, it's fun to see a live action Wookiee Jedi. I can't think of his name right now, but I think he was a little well, he was a no, he wasn't even a
Oh, is it
Padawan.
Gungi? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly who I'm talking about. He
yeah,
was so cute, I loved him. So, I think it was nice seeing a live action version of a Wookiee Jedi, just kind of especially because 'cause they're so rare. Um,
right.
so it
And
was cool to have one.
this actor Jonas brings a lot to the performance inside the Wookiee costume, the suit. Obviously, he was Chewbacca in the last few movies, so I think he's doing kind of a different Wookiee walk, and the way he carries himself is a little different than Chewbacca, but
Yeah,
he
it's
potentially,
definitely a
yeah,
differentiation from Chewbacca. Like, obviously, I was able to tell immediately, "Oh, that's not Chewbacca."
right,
Even
yes.
a casual fan, I feel like they would be able to tell.
To me, it was a little jarring to see a Wookiee wearing clothes. Though, did you
Okay.
like when you
Yeah,
first
I
see him
didn't
in the full regalia, the robes and everything?
yeah, that was a little weird, I think. I'm trying to think if he was wearing them when he was I can't remember what he was working on. Was it a speeder or something when they were
I think he had taken off the robes, but he's still wearing, like, the
yeah, he had
the
something off.
tunic, I guess,
Yeah,
yeah.
that one wasn't as bad. I was like, "Okay, that looks
Right.
right." But when they were all in the walking into the room, I was like, "Oh,
Yes.
that's weird."
I think the reason it played weird for me is because when he's got the full robes on, it kind of compresses the fur, so his body looked thinner than it would when he's got all the fur, like, poofing out, you know?
Yeah,
Like, he didn't look as bulky as I picture a Wookiee, but I think that just had something to do with the robes. Anyway, let's talk about, Lauren Brady and Leia Brady were young Osha and young May, and we've seen them pop up in the previous 2 episodes as, like, visions, but here we get to spend a lot of time with them. What did you think of the performances of these 2 young actors?
good little actresses, I think.
Yeah,
I really liked and I think they seemed like Amandla. It seemed like it could
yeah,
be a younger version of her. So I think it worked well, and seeing even just a little bit of differences in their faces, like,
right.
it played well to who they represented each
Uh-huh.
I hope that makes sense. But,
Yes.
I feel
I
like it's really easy to tell them apart and understand who is who and what side they stand on.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. My wife had an issue with this though, because obviously when May and Osha grow up, they
It
are literally identical because they're both
I
played by
know.
Amandla
Yeah, it kind
Stenberg.
of it made me a little aggravated
Yeah,
too, but I thought it made sense for people to tell them apart.
right.
Um, but it did make me upset. I was like, "Ah, why didn't they just have the same kid play?" But it made it easier to see who was who.
Yeah, exactly. So, I understood why they made that choice for sure. And then Carrie Ann Moss is back as Master Indara, who we know, spoiler alert. Why would you be listening to this if you haven't seen the first episode? But she died at the beginning of episode 1 of Ahsoka, and everybody was so upset because Carrie Ann Moss from The Matrix was so heavily featured in the ads, and then she just got murdered right away. But we knew, I think we had seen shots of the flashbacks in some of the trailers. I don't know. Did you know that she would be coming back?
I wasn't, like, expecting the murder
Oh,
necessarily.
okay. Yeah.
I, like it just seemed well, she just seemed so confident when she was
Right.
like, "Yeah, like, you're not walking out of here." Or she said something like, "Obviously, I'm gonna win. Like, you're gonna lose this fight." I was like, "Oh, okay, she's right. She is gonna lose this fight," and then she didn't.
Yeah.
But I thought the way that she passed, like, protecting the barkeeper or whatever it was and his son, and I thought it was valiant and made sense for the character, so
Yeah, but we get to see some more Indara action in these flashbacks.
mhm.
Thankfully, there's some more Carrie Ann Moss in the show. I'm a fan of her as well from The Matrix and like Memento. She's done some other great films. Let's go back to where we put that pin in about the Jedi coming in. It seems like they've almost kind of broken into this fortress because I think somebody says they like hacked into the something or other. And the witches are in the middle of this ceremony, the ascension ceremony, where basically Osha and May are becoming like full-fledged members of this coven. And the Jedi come storm in and they basically like demand to test Osha and May for their force abilities. I don't know. I feel like this puts these particular Jedi at least in a somewhat negative light. And Master Soul has this line where he says, "Oh, the Jedi don't take children." And as soon as he said it, I was like, "Wait, I'm not sure if that's
I'm
true."
pretty sure they do. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. How did you feel about this whole approach to their wanting to test Osha and May?
So, I think the first thing I was curious in is how they found out about
Yeah.
OSHA and men, because Brendock isn't a part of I don't know, maybe they've been traveling and, like, word has just
Right.
gotten out that the Coven are Force users somehow, but I feel like they don't have legs to stand on in terms of going after OSHA and May because they're not in the Republic. Um, I don't know, I was like, I didn't really have a
Yeah.
definitive opinion. I do feel like it painted them in a little bit of a negative light for
Right.
episode, but they weren't, like, being dangerous or anything necessarily or putting the children at risk, so I wasn't
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah, I do think it kind of rides the line a little bit because we have seen Jedi do this kind of thing before in other media where they take, most Jedi are brought into the order as young children. Even,
Mm,
how many times have we heard like, oh, he's too old to begin the training. So we know
mm,
that Jedi start out young. Even in this episode, Saul says he started training at what, 3 or 4 or something. And
yeah,
the other things that kind of threw me off were, uh, I think it was Carrie Ann Moss in Dara said, we didn't know that there was anyone living on this planet, right?
yeah,
And right, there were a couple lines in there that seemed odd to me, and we had seen Soul kind of watching Osha and they earlier in the episode, like peeking out from around the tree. Like something else is going on here. We haven't been clued in, I don't think, to the full truth of it yet. And then also in the other episodes that took place later on, they kept saying they were stationed on Brendok, right? Which, like, why would they be stationed there if it's not in the Republic? And it also doesn't seem like they spend a lot of time there. Like they just kind of show up, take the kids, and go. Right? It's just like
yeah,
if you're stationed there, it means you're going to be there for a while. So there's definitely something fishy to me going on,
yeah.
and I think we will learn more. Uh, you know, ha- the series creator Leslie Headland has talked about Rashomon. You're familiar? Are you familiar with Rashomon?
No, what
Okay.
wait, maybe I'll know it when you speak about it.
Yeah. Okay. So George Lucas, in creating Star Wars, was very heavily influenced by the films of Akira Kurosawa, who's a Japanese director from the 60s. And one of those movies is called Rashomon, and it's a murder mystery, sort of. But the way that movie plays out is you get the three different perspectives from three different characters of how the murder took place,
Okay.
right? So the first third is one character, the second third is another character, and the third part is the final piece. And we saw this same kind of thing happen in The Last Jedi, where we see the flashback to Luke Skywalker waking up Ben Solo in his tent.
Mhm.
And we got that from three different perspectives. One was Luke's perspective, one was Ben's perspective, and then the third one was kind of like the way it
Yeah,
actually went
yeah,
down, right? So I think because Leslie Headland has brought up Rashomon in interviews, I think we're going to get kind of a similar thing here, where this episode was mostly from Osha's perspective of these flashbacks, but I think we might get one from May's, like kind of a similar flashback episode, but told from May's perspective as we go through this season here and learn more about what actually happened. Because the other thing I want to ask you, as the episode goes on, there's this whole incident with the fire. uh May breaks into or goes into Osha's room, takes her journal in which Osha has drawn the Jedi Order insignia, and May doesn't want Osha to leave. She grabs the journal, she leaves, she sets it on fire, and then we cut away, and Osha's kind of panicking in her room. We don't really see what happened, but then all of a sudden the whole place is on fire. Later on, we know everybody, all the witches are dead. What is your interpretation of all that? What do you think is actually going on there? And do we just need more information?
yeah. I mean, my first I was like, May is being a brat. I was like, I
Yeah,
can't believe she would risk her sister's life because she doesn't want her to go to Coruscant. Like, it just seemed kind of crazy. I mean, obviously we know that May started the fire, but I don't think we know anything that actually happened yet. Even though
yeah,
we watched it happen, I don't think we know what happened. Um, I saw some speculation when I was reading online that people are like, maybe the Jedi attacked, like the 4 Jedis that are there.
right,
I don't feel like that because we didn't hear any lightsabers, we didn't hear anything like that. So I feel, in my opinion, that's off the table.
right.
Um, it just feels like out of character. So I don't like that idea. But my theory right now is that there was a power struggle with the witches.
Hmm.
And I think it had to do with Mother Anastasia allowing Osha to maybe go with the Jedi. And
Okay.
maybe there was a quarrel between her and Coral.
Coral with coral. Yeah.
Yeah, a quarrel with Coral, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that something happened maybe there, and maybe the witches were taking sides and something. That's my working theory, but it's probably very wrong. So I don't know.
I saw somebody pointing out that in the future episodes, Master Torben, when we
Mhm.
see him in his meditative
Yeah.
state, he's got the scars on his face, and he doesn't have them when we see, because there's that moment in this episode where Mother Anastasia kind of puts him in that trance and his eyes go
Yeah.
black and everything. But somebody, I haven't gone back to check this yet. I want to go check it. But somebody said at the very end when Osha wakes up on the Jedi ship, in the background you can see that Torben now has the scar.
Oh.
I don't know if
See,
that
I
is true.
wonder if that
Yeah.
coincides with how after the ceremony, May has the sigil on her forehead.
Yes.
So I wonder if based on whatever kind of magic they're doing, it's gonna create a different kind of scar, and maybe he has
Oh,
that because
maybe.
of the trance.
Maybe.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Very interesting. A lot of questions, still a lot of mystery surrounding this show.
I think
Yeah, go
alright,
ahead.
one more thing.
Please.
I think that, because of the whole power of 2 thing that the witches are stressing and the twins, I feel like there's some greater plan for the twins within the
Yeah.
witches coven. So I think that that's ultimately why they're all arguing and being very upset about this. So I feel like that whole thing is what's gonna spark
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
dra
that's something else we should talk about too, because there's a couple little hints. Like, first of all, they say the children don't have a father, and then there's that little aside where Anastasia and Coral are talking, and she says, "Well, what are the Jedi going to think when they find out how you created them?" So, I guess my question is like, what do you think that means? How do you interpret that? And
yeah.
if it turns out that Osha and May have been created using the Force or dark side of the Force or whatever, does that diminish what we know about Anakin Skywalker? Because this is the big controversy
I
right
have
now.
I
Does
have
it
great
make
opinions on this.
Yeah, does it make Anakin less special in
Yeah.
the end?
So I have a question I wanna verify with you. Did you
Yeah,
understand that Mother even though Mother Anastasia created them, is Coral the one who carried them?
that's what she says. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's what I just wanna make sure I got that right. So I
Yes.
think it's interesting because obviously at that point we know that it's, like, heavily magic inspired because the twins obviously look like Anastasia. I think I am concerned about the birth of the twins being, like,
Yeah.
force related because I do think that it will unravel the whole Chosen One prophecy.
Hmm.
Um, like, Anakin's obviously the important guy in the universe, and I feel like if these twins were born the same way he was, how does that make him important anymore? I think it would undermine his story,
Yeah.
but I also was thinking if Anakin was born to bring balance to the Force, maybe the twins' birth and this whole thing is what originally created the disturbance and the unbalance.
Oh. Yeah, that's a good question too, because my wife and I talk about this all the time. What does it mean when like Mace Windu says, "Oh, he's going to bring the prophecies is going to bring balance to the Force," or somebody says that in the
Mm.
prequels? Like, how is it out of balance at that point? Because there's no Sith around. I guess they want there to be Sith around just so that there's both light side and dark side, or
So I think that at that point, the balance to the Force prophecy is about like having equal Sith and Jedi.
yeah.
I think that the Jedi are taking it as balance of the Force means no Sith. Like, it means
So
all good. That's how I feel that they take
okay,
it. So, because in if it is, like, equal, I would say that Anakin does restore balance then because all the Jedi would be gone and there's very little Force users on both ends.
very interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot to think and talk about there, and I think I have seen next week's episode already, but I'm not going to say
Mm,
anything except that we'll have, people fans will have a lot more to
tough.
talk about regarding that next week. Um, anything that so you're kind of bothered by the potential of the Anakin thing being undermined,
Yeah.
and that kind of reminds me of my problem with all these Jedi having survived Order 66. Like, this was never a thing when I was growing up. It was just Luke, because Yoda has that line, when gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be, Return of the Jedi, and then they started having all these other Jedi around after Order 66. I was like, well, that makes Luke less special. And now I guess people are bothered that the same thing might be happening to Anakin. So I totally understand that concern. But was there anything else that you didn't care for in this particular episode?
I think it was really just being on the fence about how it would affect Anakin's storyline. I liked the episode otherwise. I feel like I wish I would have gotten more on what the markings on the witches mean.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
really wanted to understand more about that. Um,
Okay.
I want as much detail as I could get. Like, I wanna know where they're from. I wanna know what they're doing. I wanna know everything. So I hate when it's, like, up in the air because I want direct answers.
Okay.
Um,
Well, the great thing about Star Wars is even if the show doesn't tell us, we'll probably get a novel or something,
yeah,
or some kind of reference guide about how the witches operate.
yeah, and I'd love to
Yeah.
know how it will affect the twins and their connection, because the one has the mark and the other one didn't complete the ritual. So I
Yeah.
wonder if it's also because I feel like because they're both alive, they should have been able to almost feel each other through the Force, even at the
Mm,
slightest bit.
yeah.
So maybe because one has a mark and one doesn't, that's kind of severed their connection. So I'd love to see them maybe talk about that somehow.
I've seen other people theorizing that Osha and May might be another Force dyad, like
That's
Ray and Kylo Ren.
I was thinking that as well, and I started thinking that right from when I don't remember the name of the planet, wherever Osha crash landed, on the
Oh,
prison
yeah, I don't
ship.
remember that. I don't remember either. I know it's from the Clone Wars, but I
Yeah,
don't remember.
wherever she crash landed when she was going through, like, the ice caverns and stuff, the way that, she was almost, like, transformed to another place when she was seeing May, that felt like how Rey and Kylo were getting transformed to the other
Yeah,
areas. So I
yeah.
was thinking about it then, but at that point, I was like, "There's no way, she's not alive." So but I think that that's plausible. I'd like if they did that. I think it would give more
Yeah.
information to what, like, the Force dyad is.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see them explore that idea some more. Anything else you'd like to say about this episode, Destiny, before we move along?
Don't have anything else. I think it was
Okay.
really good overall. I really liked it, and I feel like it progressed the story much more than the
Yeah,
first two did.
I really liked it too. It was probably my favorite of the 4 episodes that got sent out as, like, screeners for the media before the show premiered, and I will say, like, I didn't think the 2 young twin girls were great actresses, but I'll also say, like, I can totally forgive that because of how much they had a lot of screen time, they had a lot of lines, and with what they were given, I think that they did a pretty good job. Um, I think it's so tough as a kid actor to come into something like this and really knock it out of the park. And the examples of that happening are so few and far between that it doesn't really surprise me when I'm like not terribly impressed by child actors, but I don't hold it against them. And certainly this franchise, Star Wars, has seen its share of less than convincing child actors before. So
I think they
um
were
yeah,
good. I
yeah,
think that they have the possibility to, like, grow and be better,
yeah,
but I thought they were good.
certainly.
They didn't do a bad job.
They didn't do a bad job. Yeah, maybe my standards are just too high.
Okay.
I'll say that. Okay, let's get into the future of the Acolyte. What are you hoping and expecting from these remaining 5 episodes as the weeks go on?
Well, I'd love a Yoda appearance,
Yeah.
obviously. I think that would be nice, even if we just get to see him for a frame. I feel like it would be kind of dumb if they didn't do it knowing, like I don't know, it would be a great connection for people who love Yoda, obviously, and it would bring in more viewers if he was there. So I'd love that, and then really I'd like to see the twin connection and the Force dyad thing maybe
Okay.
be up.
Cool. Yeah, I think an appearance by the Jedi Council would make perfect sense. They've referenced the council. We haven't seen them yet in this show, but Yoda is certainly on the council at this point in the timeline. And I talked about this when I was on my friend's the Skywalking Through Neverland podcast, but um, Frank Oz, the performer behind Yoda, is definitely more than willing in recent years to come back and do more Yoda. So it wouldn't shock me if Yoda shows up, but my prediction would be probably in the finale if he does pop up at all. Um, and yeah, as far as me, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I'm enjoying the show. Looking forward to finding out the answers to some of these mysteries and getting the other perspectives on this incident at the witch's fortress there on Brendok. I think it should be pretty interesting, and I love that this show is willing to show kind of the moral gray area of the Jedi Order, which we don't get a ton of. And I think it's better. It is more interesting to me than the Jedi just being like these perfect, knights that go around doing good all over the galaxy. If there's a little bit of moral question to the way that they're behaving, I think that I am more interested in that. Okay, let's wrap up our discussion of the Acolyte for this week and get into our final segment here on Who's the Bossk. It's called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My wife and I actually checked out Squid Game. This is a big Netflix series from Korea that it got a lot of attention when it came out, and I kind of missed out on it. I didn't have the time to watch it back then, but now this actor Lee Jung-jae is doing so great. He's awesome in The Acolyte, so I had to go watch the first episode of Squid Game. I thought it was really well made. Very dark comedy satire, and it's very extremely violent. I know my mom would not care for it, and I know she's probably listening or watching right now. So don't watch Squid Game, Mom. But I liked it. I'm gonna watch some more of that. How about you, Jessica? Anything else that you've been watching, reading, playing, consuming outside of Star Wars lately?
I'm prepping for House of the Dragon, the new release on Sunday, so I'm excited for that. So I've been doing lots of Game of Thrones stuff in general, and then I got into Foundation. Do you know what Foundation is?
I think my wife reads these they're books, right?
So
Yeah.
yeah, the books are by Isaac Asimov, and then
Okay.
there's a TV show on Apple TV. I think 2
Okay.
seasons. But I like it because it's another sci-fi. I have heard that the books are very different though, because I haven't ventured into the books yet.
Okay.
But yeah, really great to see a different sci-fi universe,
Right.
and obviously there are Star Wars ties that you can like tie in and be like, this is similar. But
Yeah.
it's cool to just see how the different directions of the two and how they approach like ruling the universe and all of that. I really liked Foundation. You should check it out. I think you'd like it too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll put it on my list. We have a very long list of TV shows that we need to watch.
And Squid Games is great. I'm happy you're watching that. I loved it.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna continue with that one for
And
sure.
they have Netflix also made a little game show out. You know how they do like their
Yeah.
reality shows. I thought that was entertaining too. The watching everyone do the actual challenges and stuff.
Yeah, when I searched for Squid Game, that came up too, and we might check that out after we finished with the dramatic series. And let's see, one final comment here from Dr. War God. Check out the Korean film Parasite. That won Best Picture at the Oscars a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that as well. That's going to bring us to the end of this episode of Who's the Bossk. Big thank you to my guest for the first time coming on the show, Jessica Milne, my cousin who loves Star Wars. My mom was right. So thank you, Jessica. Again, I had a
Thank
blast
you for
chatting
having me.
with you. Really appreciate it. Do you want to now you don't have to do this, but if you want, you can send people to find you somewhere on the internet, or you want to keep that to
I
yourself?
don't have any like I don't have a Star Wars account or anything,
Okay.
but
All right. Well, we'll
maybe in
say
the future, if I have one in the future and I'm back
okay.
on, I'll share.
Cool. Well, for now, we'll have you back on the show sometime in the future and hopefully chat some more about Star Wars. I do want to plug my other podcast, Pop Culture Explorers Club. It's a show that I do with my friend Drew Gergich, and we talk about stuff, again, outside of the Star Wars franchise. This week, we had 2 episodes. One is about the recent box office woes that Hollywood is experiencing. And then the Pixar episode that I talked about earlier is coming out, I think, tomorrow. So check those out. On the next episode of Who's the Bossk, we will be talking about The Acolyte, episode 4. So stay tuned for that coming up next week. And as always, visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. My name is Mike Celestino. Thanks again, Jessica Milne. And we'll see you next time right here on Who's the Bossk. Bye.